The Florida sun hammered down on the corrugated tin roof of the briefing shed like the fist of an angry god. Inside, the air was thick enough to chew, a toxic cocktail of diesel fumes, stale coffee, and the particular musk of men who believed themselves invincible. The shed sat at the edge of the Everglades where civilization surrendered to a wilderness older and meaner than any war these Marines had ever trained for. Major Dalton Blackwood stood at the head of a folding table, his uniform somehow still crisp despite the oppressive heat. He was a recruitment poster brought to life. Square jaw, steel gray eyes, shoulders that seemed to carry the weight of the entire Marine Corps. But look closer and you'd see the cracks. The tremor in his right hand when he thought no one was watching. The way his pupils were just slightly too dilated, even in the harsh fluorescent light. The thin sheen of sweat on his upper lip that had nothing to do with the temperature. He was looking at a topographical map spread across the table, jabbing at it with a government-issue pen that clicked with mechanical precision. Four Marines stood at attention behind him. They were young, they were hard. They believed they were the tip of the spear, the finest warriors America could forge. They had no idea how wrong they were about to be proven. Staff Sergeant Garrett Stone was 32 but looked older. Combat in Helmand Province had etched lines into his face that made him appear like he'd lived two lifetimes. He was the platoon leader, the man other men looked to when the bullets started flying. His hands were scarred from 1,000 training exercises, his eyes constantly scanning, always assessing threats. He wore his responsibility like armor, heavy and unforgiving. Corporal Flynn Rourke stood to Stone's left. 28 years old, built like a brick shithouse, with knuckles that bore the permanent discoloration of a man who settled arguments with violence. He was the platoon's hand-to-hand combat instructor, the one they called when someone needed to learn respect the hard way. His smile was easy, but his eyes were hard. He'd failed the SEAL selection pipeline twice, and that failure had calcified into a resentment he carried like a knife against his ribs. Private First Class Wade Sullivan was 23 and still had that eager, hungry look of a man trying to prove he belonged. He was lean where Rourke was thick, with quick eyes and quicker hands. The platoon's designated marksman, though he hadn't seen real combat yet. Just endless training, endless drills, endless preparation for a test that never seemed to come. He stood at attention with his back ramrod straight, desperate to be seen as worthy. Lance Corporal Brett Hawkins completed the quartet. 26 radio operator, the communications specialist who could make dead equipment sing. He had a smart mouth and a smarter mind, the kind of guy who'd scored perfect on his ASVAB and could have gone anywhere but chose the infantry because he wanted to be where the action was. He wore a cocky grin that suggested he knew something the rest of them didn't. Blackwood's voice cut through the humid air like a blade through butter. Gentlemen, Operation Gator Fang is 72 hours of pure hell. You will insert 30 clicks deep into the Everglades. No support, no extraction unless you complete the objective or sustain life-threatening injury. Your mission is simple. Navigate to the designated extraction point. Evade the op for hunter teams. Survive. He traced a route on the map with his finger. The line cut through some of the most unforgiving terrain in North America. Swampland, where alligators outnumbered people 1,000 to 1. Where the water was the color of old coffee and hid things that could kill you in a dozen different ways. Where men had walked in and never walked out. This is Force Recon selection level training. The Marine Corps' elite. You four were chosen because you're the best. Don't disappoint me. Stone studied the map with a professional eye. His training kicked in automatically identifying high ground water sources, potential ambush points. But something nagged at him. Something felt wrong about the route Blackwood had chosen. Too exposed. Too predictable. He opened his mouth to voice the concern. The door to the shed swung open. The woman who walked in moved like water. Smooth, unhurried, economical. She was 29 years old, but carried herself with a confidence that suggested she'd seen more in her short life than most people saw in 80 years. Lieutenant Kira Brennan wore simple tactical pants and a moisture-wicking shirt. Navy issue, but no rank visible, no unit patch, nothing to identify her as anything other than a person who knew how to move in hostile environments. Her hair was the color of wheat left too long in the sun, pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail. Her eyes were the green of deep ocean water, the kind that hid reefs and riptides. She had a dusting of freckles across her nose that might have made her look young, except for the 3 pale scars that ran down her left forearm like tally marks. Her hands were small, but her grip, if you ever shook, it would surprise you. Calloused, strong, the hands of someone who'd done real work. She stopped just inside the door, letting her eyes adjust to the dim interior. She took in the 4 Marines with a single sweeping glance that cataloged everything. Their weapons, their stance, their attitude. She noted the way Rourke's eyes narrowed slightly when he saw her, the way Sullivan straightened up even more if that was possible. The way Hawkins' grin widened into something that wasn't quite respectful. Blackwood's face went through a fascinating transformation. Surprise followed by irritation, followed by something that looked uncomfortably like contempt. "You must be the Navy liaison," he said. His voice dripped with barely concealed disdain. "Lieutenant Kira Brennan Major, SEAL Team 3, here as observer and subject matter expert on swamp operations." Her voice was low, even with a slight rasp that suggested she'd spent time breathing smoke or screaming orders over gunfire. Probably both. "Subject matter expert." Blackwood repeated the words like they tasted bad. "The Navy sent me a Girl Scout to babysit my Marine." The 4 men behind him didn't quite laugh, but the amusement rippled through them like a current. Rourke's grin got wider. Stone's expression remained neutral, but his eyes flickered with something that might have been approval of his commanding officer's assessment. Sullivan looked confused, like he wasn't sure what the appropriate response was. Hawkins just kept that cocky smirk plastered on his face. Kira didn't react, didn't blush, didn't bristle, didn't rise to the bait. She simply walked to the table and looked down at the map. Her eyes traced the route Blackwood had marked. Her finger, unbidden, reached out and tapped 3 specific points along the planned path. "This route puts you through Snake Bite, low ground, flash flood risk with the storms coming in." Her finger moved. "Here you're crossing directly through a known alligator breeding ground. And your extraction point," she tapped the final mark, "is built on unstable ground. Looks like solid earth on satellite imaging, but it's actually a peat bog. You put a helicopter down there, and it'll sink to its axles." The silence in the shed was absolute. Blackwood's face went through another transformation. The contempt crystallized into something harder, colder. His hand, the one with the tremor, clenched into a fist. "Are you questioning my tactical planning, Lieutenant? I'm offering expertise, Major. It's what I'm here for." "What you're here for," Blackwood said, and his voice dropped to a register that was almost a whisper, almost a threat, "is to observe. That means you watch. You take notes. You keep your mouth shut unless spoken to. My Marines don't need advice from someone who probably couldn't ruck 20 miles with a full combat load." Kira met his gaze, didn't flinch, didn't look away. The moment stretched out taut as a tripwire. "Understood, Major," she said finally. "I'll observe." But her eyes went back to the map, to those 3 points she'd identified. She was memorizing them, filing them away, because she knew something Blackwood either didn't know or didn't care about. People died in the Everglades. People died easily, and bad planning didn't just mean failure, it meant body bags. Blackwood turned back to his Marines, dismissing her with the gesture. "Gear check is at 1400 hours. We insert at first light tomorrow. Questions?" "No, sir," they chorused. Dismissed. The Marines filed out. Kira followed last, moving with that same water-smooth economy of motion. As she passed through the door, Blackwood's voice stopped her. "Lieutenant," she turned, "I don't know what strings you pulled to get this assignment, but let me make something crystal clear. This is a Marine operation. You're here because some admiral thinks we need adult supervision. You're not. Touch nothing. Interfere with nothing. If my men fail, they fail on their own merits, not because some Navy publicity stunt distracted them. Are we clear?" Kira looked at him for a long moment, really looked. Saw the tremor he was trying to hide. Saw the pharmaceutical glaze over eyes that should have been sharp. Saw a man holding on to control by his fingernails. "Crystal clear, Major." She walked out into the Florida heat. The sun was a physical weight. The air smelled like rotting vegetation and diesel fuel. Somewhere in the distance, a gator bellowed. The sound was primordial, ancient, a reminder that humans were the newcomers here. Kira pulled out her phone. No signal. Of course, they were too far from civilization for reliable cell service. She switched to satellite mode and composed a message. Thorn, route is suicide, Blackwood is compromised. Something wrong here. She hit send and watched the message compress, encrypt, and launch itself into the void. Then she walked toward the equipment yard where the Marines would be staging their gear. She had work to do, observations to make, and a very bad feeling that this exercise was going to go sideways in ways no one was prepared for. The gear check area was an open-air shed with a concrete floor and enough space to lay out equipment for a platoon. The 4 Marines had claimed their section and were methodically unpacking their rucksacks, arranging everything on waterproof ponchos with the precision of men who'd done this 1,000 times. It was an impressive display. Top-of-the-line everything. M4 carbines with advanced optics and suppressors, night vision goggles, tactical communication systems that could punch through jamming and atmospheric interference, GPS units with satellite uplinks, medical kits that could handle everything from a sucking chest wound to a snake bite, water filtration systems, high-calorie ration packs, enough ammunition to fight a small war. Kira set her own pack down in a corner. It was small, almost comically small compared to the massive rucksacks the Marines carried. An old Alice pack, probably military surplus from the 90s with stains and repairs that spoke of hard use over many years. No brand names, no high-tech fabrics, just green canvas and determination. Rourke noticed first. Of course he did. He was the kind of man who noticed perceived weakness the way a shark noticed blood in the water. Hey, Sullivan, check it out. His voice carried across the shed, loud enough to be heard, but not quite loud enough to be called shouting. Looks like the lieutenant is packing for a weekend camping trip. Sullivan glanced over, tried to suppress a grin, and failed. Hawkins wandered closer, his radio equipment already secured to his vest. He squatted down next to Kira's pack, making a show of examining it. Ma'am, is this even regulation? Looks like something my granddad used in Desert Storm. Older, Kira said without looking up from her own equipment check, but still works. Yeah, but... Hawkins picked up her pack with one hand hefting it. This can't be more than 30 pounds. We're going out for 3 days. How much did you pack a toothbrush and a granola bar? Now all 4 Marines were watching. Stone hadn't said anything yet, but he'd stopped his own gear check. This was entertainment, a break in the monotony of preparation. Rourke stood up from his own pile of equipment and sauntered over. He was smiling, but it wasn't a friendly expression. It was the smile of a man who'd found prey. Seriously, Lieutenant, what do you have in there? Make up a change of clothes, maybe a cell phone charger. He squatted down next to her pack, reaching for it. Let me guess, you're planning to call for extraction after the first night when you realize you can't handle... Kira's hand shot out. Not fast enough to be aggressive, not slow enough to be weak, just precisely timed. She caught his wrist before his fingers touched her pack. Corporal, I'd prefer if you didn't touch my equipment. Her voice was still even, still calm, but there was steel underneath now, a warning. Rourke looked down at her hand on his wrist, looked at her face, the smile on his lips got wider, meaner. Or what, ma'am? The air in the shed changed, became charged. Stone took a step closer, his professional interest piqued. Sullivan stopped pretending to work on his gear. Hawkins's grin faltered just slightly. Kira released Rourke's wrist and stood up. She was 5'7". Rourke was 6'2" and outweighed her by at least 80 pounds of muscle. The physical disparity was obvious. Laughable, even. Or nothing, Corporal. I'm just asking for professional courtesy. Rourke stood up too. He rolled his shoulders, cracked his neck. The movement was theatrical, designed to emphasize his size, his strength, his dominance. You know what, ma'am? I think you could use some professional courtesy, some professional advice. He gestured to the training dummy set up in the corner of the shed. Standard Marine Corps issue a weighted bag shaped vaguely like a human torso. See, the Everglades can be dangerous. Snakes, gators, maybe even some bad dudes if you're unlucky. And you're going to be out there with us. So I'm thinking for your own safety, I should teach you some basic self-defense. That's not necessary, Corporal. Oh, I think it is. Rourke walked to the dummy. He grabbed it, demonstrating a simple joint lock. Twisted the dummy's arm behind its back and slammed it face first into the concrete. The impact echoed through the shed like a gunshot. See simple compliance hold, something to slow an enemy down if you get grabbed. Let me show you how it feels so you understand the leverage points. He turned back to Kira, took a step toward her. Stone didn't intervene. Sullivan looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Hawkins's grin was back wider than ever. This was hazing. This was establishing the pecking order. This was a lesson that the old boys of the special operations community had been teaching uppity females for years now. You don't belong here. You're weak. You're a liability. Let us show you. Rourke reached out and grabbing Kira's left arm. His grip was iron, designed to be just slightly painful, just slightly intimidating. Don't worry, ma'am. I'll be gentle. He started to apply pressure, started to twist her arm behind her back the way he'd done with the dummy, started to demonstrate his superior strength, his superior skill, his superior right to be here. What happened next took less than 2 seconds. Kira didn't resist the pressure, didn't try to pull away. Instead, she moved with it, yielded to it. Her entire body flowed in the direction he was pulling, rotating her shoulder, dropping her center of gravity. It was like trying to grab water, like trying to hold smoke. Her right hand came up, not in a fist, not in a strike, just fingers extended precise as a surgeon's scalpel. She found the cluster of nerves on the inside of Rourke's wrist, just below the thumb. The radial nerve where it surfaced close to the skin, vulnerable and exposed. She pressed, not hard, maybe 10 pounds of pressure, exactly the right angle, exactly the right spot, exactly the right amount of force. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. White-hot agony exploded up Rourke's arm. His fingers went numb. His grip vanished as if it had never existed. He tried to pull back, but Kira's other hand was already at his elbow. Not grabbing, just guiding. Using in his own momentum, his own strength, his own attempt to escape against him. The elbow is a hinge joint. It only bends one way. Kira knew this. Rourke's body knew this. But his brain, flooded with pain and surprise, forgot this. He went down. One knee hit the concrete with a wet crack that made everyone in the shed wince. His head bowed forward not in deference, but because his body's balance had been completely compromised. He was kneeling before her, his right arm extended at an angle that screamed submission. Every muscle in his body locked up in a futile attempt to escape pain that was already happening. Kira held the position for exactly 1 second, long enough for everyone to see it, long enough for the lesson to sink in. Then she released him and stepped back. Rourke scrambled to his feet. His face was a mask of shock and humiliation. He cradled his wrist fingers, flexing testing to make sure everything still worked. His eyes blazed with shame and fury in equal measure. Kira's expression hadn't changed. Still calm, still neutral. She might have been discussing the weather. The elbow is a hinge corporal, not a ball joint. If you forget that you give your opponent control of your entire kinetic chain, pressure points are force multipliers. Size and strength mean nothing if you can't apply them. Her voice was soft, educational, like she was teaching a class, not humiliating a grown man in front of his peers. The sound of boots on concrete made everyone turn. Major Blackwood strode into the shed. His eyes took in the scene instantly. Rourke flushed and breathing hard, still massaging his wrist. Kira, standing relaxed, her gear still unpacked. The other 3 Marines frozen in various states of shock. What the hell happened here? Rourke opened his mouth, closed it. The truth was too embarrassing. The lie wouldn't hold up under questioning. Stone stepped forward, his face carefully neutral. Training demonstration, sir. The lieutenant was showing Corporal Rourke some hand-to-hand techniques. Blackwood's eyes narrowed. He looked from Stone to Kira to Rourke. He knew. Of course he knew. You didn't make Major without learning to read body language to sense the unspoken currents in a room. His face hardened into something ugly. Lieutenant Brennan, a word, outside, now. Kira followed him out of the shed into the blazing afternoon sun. Blackwood walked 20 paces away from the building, far enough that voices wouldn't carry. Then he rounded on her. What the hell do you think you're doing? Corporal Rourke grabbed me, Major. I defended myself, or should I have filed a formal complaint about unwanted physical contact? The threat hung in the air between them. They both knew it. A sexual harassment complaint would trigger an investigation. Questions would be asked. The whole exercise would be shut down pending review. Blackwood's career, already on thin ice, would shatter. His jaw worked. The tremor in his hand got worse. "You just assaulted one of my Marines." "He assaulted me, sir. I used the minimum force necessary to extract myself from an unwanted physical interaction. That's textbook self-defense doctrine. Or would you prefer I let male service members manhandle me without response?" Blackwood's face went through several shades of red. So he was trapped and he knew it. Kira had just judo flipped the entire situation. If he pushed this, she'd file the complaint. If he didn't, he looked weak in front of his men. He chose the third option: intimidation. He stepped closer, invaded her personal space, used his height, his rank, his authority as weapons. "Listen to me very carefully, Lieutenant. I don't know what kind of games they play into the Navy, but in my Marine Corps, we have something called unit cohesion. We have respect for the chain of command. We have order. What you just did in there, that was detrimental to all three. You embarrassed one of my Marines, you undermined my authority, you disrupted my operation." Kira stood her ground, didn't step back, met his eyes. "With respect, Major, your Marine grabbed me. I extracted myself. If that embarrassed him, perhaps he should reconsider his approach to female service members. You are an observer, Lieutenant. That is all you are. You observe. You take notes. You keep your mouth shut and your hands to yourself. You do not engage with my men. You do not train them. You do not interfere with my operation in any way. Is that crystal fucking clear?" "Crystal clear, sir." "Good, because the next time you step out of line, I don't care what admiral you have in your pocket. I will have you removed from my area of operations and sent back to whatever diversity seminar recruited you. Do we understand each other?" "Perfectly, Major." He stared at her for another long moment, looking for any sign of defiance, any crack in her composure. Found nothing. She was a wall, smooth and featureless and utterly unmoved by his threats. He spun on his heel and marched back toward the main buildings, leaving her standing alone in the Florida heat. Kira waited until he was out of sight. Then she pulled out her sat phone again. Still no response from Thorne. She typed another message. "Situation deteriorating. Blackwood hostile. Marines hostile. Exercise proceeds tomorrow. Request backup plan." She sent it and walked back into the gear shed. The four Marines were exactly where she'd left them, but the energy had shifted. They weren't looking at her with amusement anymore. Sullivan looked uncomfortable. Hawkins had lost his cocky grin. Stone's expression was unreadable. Rourke wouldn't meet her eyes. Kira went back to her corner and resumed unpacking her gear. Small pack, old pack. But what came out of it was anything but amateur hour. A water filtration straw that could process 1,000 liters. A ferro rod that would start fires in any weather. A compact medical kit with trauma shears, Israeli bandages, hemostatic gauze. A survival knife with a 7-inch blade, the steel dark with age and hard use. Paracord, a small tarp. Water purification tablets. A compact fishing kit. Waterproof matches sealed in a plastic case. No Jeeps, no fancy electronics. No batteries to die or circuits to corrode. Just tools. Simple, reliable, proven over decades of hard use. And one more thing. She pulled out a small waterproof pouch and opened it. Inside was a photograph laminated to protect it from water. The photo showed a younger Kira, maybe 19 or 20, standing next to a group of men in desert camouflage. The background was sand and burning oil fields. Kuwait, Desert Storm era. One of the men had his arm around young Kira's shoulders. He was older, maybe 60, with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. She looked at the photo for a long moment, then carefully returned it to the pouch and secured it in her pack. Sullivan, watching from across the shed, couldn't help himself. "Ma'am, who's in the picture?" Kira didn't look up. "My instructor, a long time ago." "He teach you that move, the one you used on Rourke?" "He taught me a lot of things, Private. How to survive, how to fight, how to be better than people expect." She finished securing her gear and stood up. "Your platoon sergeant set a good route?" The sudden shift in topic caught Sullivan off guard. Yes, ma'am. GPS coordinates loaded. We're good to go." "And if the GPS fails," silence. "What's your backup navigation plan if your electronics die?" More silence. "What does?" Stone stepped forward, now his professional pride engaged. We've got map and compass, ma'am. Standard land navigation. Good. And when was the last time you checked the declination for this area? Stone's hesitation was answer enough. Magnetic declination in the Everglades is approximately 5 degrees west. Your compass will be off by almost 100 meters per kilometer if you don't correct for shit. In terrain like this, 100 meters can put you in quicksand instead of solid ground. She pulled a battered topographic map from her own pack and spread it on the ground. The Marines, despite themselves, moved closer. The map was covered in handwritten notes, pencil marks indicating seasonal flood zones, red X's marking alligator nesting areas, blue circles around water sources that were safe to drink from, yellow highlights on areas of unstable ground. This is 20 years of institutional knowledge, Kira said, tapping the map. From SEALs who have trained in this environment. Your route, she traced Blackwood's planned path, puts you here at dusk on day 2, low ground. If it rains, and it will, you'll be chest deep in water by midnight. Every predator in a 5-mile radius will know exactly where you are because you'll be the only warm-blooded thing stupid enough to be standing in floodwater. Stone looked at the map, looked at his GPS route. His jaw tightened. Major Blackwood approved this route. Major Blackwood made a mistake. Whether through ignorance or intention, I don't know. But that route will get someone hurt, or worse. Rourke, still nursing his wrist, finally spoke up. His voice was rough with barely suppressed anger. So what, we're supposed to trust you instead? The girl who just assaulted one of us? No offense, ma'am, but I don't know you. I don't know your qualifications. For all I know, you're some desk jockey who pencil-whipped a SEAL qualification and now thinks she's operator material. Kira looked at him, really looked at him. Saw the hurt pride, the damaged ego, the resentment that went bone deep. Corporal Rourke, you attempted SEAL selection twice. Both times you made it through Hell Week. Both times you failed the land navigation phase in the final weeks. Not because you weren't strong enough, not because you weren't tough enough, but because you relied too much on technology and not enough on fieldcraft. Rourke's face went pale. That information was supposed to be confidential. How the hell did she know? I know because I was an instructor evaluator during your second attempt. I watched you trust your GPS over your own eyes. I watched you walk right past a water source marked on your map because your electronics said it wasn't there. The Everglades will punish that kind of thinking, not with a failed evaluation, with death. She rolled up her map and secured it. You don't have to trust me, Corporal. You don't have to like me. But 24 hours from now, when you're lost and wet and cold, and your GPS is dead and Major Blackwood is too far away to help, you're going to remember this conversation, and you're going to wish you'd listened. She slung her pack over her shoulders. The straps settled into grooves worn smooth by years of use. Insert is at 0500. I suggest you all get some sleep. It's going to be a long 3 days. She walked out of the shed, leaving 4 Marines standing in uncomfortable silence. Night fell over the Everglades training facility like a suffocating blanket. The temperature dropped maybe 10 degrees, but the humidity stayed at saturation. Somewhere in the darkness, a panther screamed. The sound was almost human, a woman's wail of grief and rage. It raised the hair on the back of your neck and reminded you that humans were not the apex predator here. Kira sat alone outside her temporary bunk, a converted shipping container, with a cot and a wall locker. She'd passed on the air-conditioned quarters offered to visiting officers, wanted to acclimate to the heat and humidity, wanted her body to remember what real discomfort felt like before she stepped into something worse. Her sat phone buzzed. Finally. The message was short, encrypted, from a number with no name attached. Brennan, at facility, meet at fuel depot, 2300. Thorn, she checked her watch. 22:45. She stood stretched and started walking. The fuel depot was on the far side of the facility, a cluster of above-ground tanks surrounded by chain-link fence far enough from the barracks that an accidental ignition wouldn't kill anyone. The area was dark, no lights, no security cameras, a blind spot in the facility's coverage. A man stepped out of the shadows. Colonel Booker Thorne stepped from the shadows. 67, weathered as old teak with gunmetal eyes and white hair still cut high and tight. He moved with the careful precision of a body that had survived more damage than it should have. He was wearing civilian clothes, hiking pants, a technical shirt, boots that had seen real miles. No rank, no insignia, nothing to identify him as anything other than an aging outdoorsman. "Sir," Kira said softly. "Brennan." His voice was gravel wrapped in sandpaper, the result of breathing too much smoke and screaming too many orders. "Situation report. Major Blackwood is compromised. Tremors, dilated pupils, paranoid behavior. My assessment is prescription medication abuse, possibly benzodiazepines or stimulants. He's designed a route that maximizes risk and minimizes safety margins." When I questioned it, he became hostile. Thorne's jaw tightened. "The investigation, ongoing, JSOC has evidence of financial irregularities, unexplained deposits, possible connections to regional smuggling operations, but nothing concrete enough for charges yet. And your role, bait, apparently. Someone in the intelligence chain thinks if we insert near-known smuggling routes, we might draw out contacts. See who Blackwood warns, who changes their patterns." Thorne was silent for a long moment, his eyes scanning the darkness out of habit. "This is bad doctrine, Brennan, using a training exercise as cover for an investigation. Too many variables, too many ways for people to get hurt." "Agreed, sir, but orders are orders. Orders can be changed. I can pull you right now. Call this off." Kira shook her head. "If we abort, Blackwood gets spooked. His contacts go to ground. The investigation stalls. More importantly, those 4 Marines are going into the Everglades tomorrow with a compromised commander and a suicide route. If I'm not there—" She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Thorne sighed, the sound of a man who'd been having this same argument for 4 decades. "You always were too goddamn noble for your own good. Even back in Buds, you were the one who wouldn't quit, wouldn't cut corners, wouldn't leave anyone behind, even the ones who'd spent weeks trying to wash you out. You taught me that, sir. I taught you a lot of things, including when to walk away from a bad situation. You also taught me that SEALs don't leave people behind. Those Marines didn't ask for a corrupt CO. They don't deserve to die because someone in JSOC wanted to run a cowboy op." Thorne looked at her for a long moment, saw the set of her jaw, the steel in her eyes. The same stubborn determination that had carried her through the hardest military training pipeline in the world, that had made her one of the first women to earn a SEAL Trident, that had taken her on deployments where she'd proven herself again and again in ways that should never have been necessary but were. "All right," he said finally, "but I'm not letting you go in there alone. I'm already cleared as a civilian consultant for this facility. I'll be on site. If things go sideways, I'm 30 minutes out with a fast rope team." "Sir, you're retired. You don't have to." "Brennan, I've been in this business since before you were born. I trained you. I watched you earn your Trident. I'm not going to sit on a beach in Pensacola drinking margaritas while you walk into a shitstorm." His voice softened slightly. "Besides, I owe your daddy." Kira blinked. That was new information. "Sir," Thorne pulled something from his pocket. A photograph, old, faded, laminated to protect it. It showed 2 much younger men in desert camouflage arms around each other's shoulders, grinning, despite the oil fires burning in the background. One of them was a young Booker Thorne. The other was someone Kira recognized instantly, her father. "Kuwait, 1991. Your dad was Air Force Special Tactics. I was leading a SEAL element doing direct action raids. We got ambushed. Iraqi Republican Guard, the real deal, not conscripts. Your father called in danger close airstrikes to pull us out. Saved my entire team. I've owed the Brennan family for 33 years. Time to pay up." Kira's throat was tight. Her father had died when she was 12. Heart attack. Gone before she'd really understood what he did, who he was, the kind of man that made other warriors respect him. "He never told me that story." "He wouldn't have. That's not the kind of man he was." Thorne carefully returned the photo to his pocket. "But he'd be proud of you. I made him a promise at his funeral. Told him if you ever followed in his footsteps, I'd watch over you. So here I am." "Sir, I know you don't need a babysitter, Brennan. You're one of the most competent operators I've ever trained. But everyone needs backup, even the best. especially the best because the best are the ones who get handed the impossible missions. He pulled a small equipment bag from behind a fuel tank where he'd stashed it. GPS tracker. Keep it on you. Encrypted frequency. I'll know where you are every step of the way. If you need extraction, you hit the panic button. I'm in the air within 5 minutes. Kira took the tracker. It was about the size of a pack of cigarettes. Waterproof, shockproof, military grade. And if Blackwood notices I'm being tracked, he won't. It's shielded to look like background RF noise. Besides, he'll be too busy managing his own situation to worry about yours. Thorne's expression hardened. Brennan, listen to me. If, and I mean if this goes kinetic, if you encounter actual hostiles, you are authorized to defend yourself and those Marines with lethal force. JSOC rules of engagement are in effect. But your primary mission is to bring those boys home alive. Gathering intelligence on Blackwood is secondary. Am I clear? Crystal, sir. Good. Now get some sleep. You've got a long day tomorrow. He melted back into the shadows, moving with a silence that belied his age. Kira watched him go, then looked down at the tracker in her hand. She thought about her father, about a promise made over a grave, about the weight of expectations and the price of legacy. Then she slipped the tracker into her pocket and walked back to her bunk. 4 hours until insertion. 4 hours to sleep. 4 hours before everything went to hell. The panther screamed again in the darkness. Closer this time. Hunting. The UH-60 Blackhawk beat the pre-dawn air into submission. Inside the cargo bay, 6 souls sat in tense silence. The 4 Marines, Lieutenant Kira Brennan, and a crew chief who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The helicopter's turbines screamed a pitch that made conversation impossible, which was a mercy. No one had anything to say. Staff Sergeant Garrett Stone sat nearest the open door, his M4 carbine held at low ready. His eyes fixed on the darkness rushing past below. The Everglades at 4 in the morning was an absence of light so complete it seemed to swallow the world. No city glow, no street lights, just an endless expanse of black that hid a million ways to die. Corporal Flynn Rourke sat across from Stone, his jaw set, his hands checking and rechecking his equipment with mechanical precision. He hadn't looked at Kira once during the flight. The humiliation from yesterday still burned in his gut like bad whiskey. His wrist still ached where she'd hit that pressure point, a dull throb that reminded him every few seconds that he'd been made to kneel before a woman half his size. Private First Class Wade Sullivan was next to Rourke, his young face pale in the red cargo lighting. This was his first real field exercise with the platoon. He'd trained for months, proven himself on ranges and obstacle courses, but this was different. This was the Everglades. This was real. And sitting 3 feet away was a Navy SEAL who just demonstrated she could take down their hand-to-hand combat instructor without breaking a sweat. Lance Corporal Brett Hawkins sat near the crew chief, his radio equipment already live monitoring frequencies. He'd lost his cocky grin somewhere between yesterday's gear check and now. Replaced it with a professional focus that was probably what he should have led with in the first place. Kira sat in the back corner, her small pack between her boots, her eyes closed. She wasn't sleeping. She was listening. To the pitch of the engines, the rhythm of the rotors, the small changes in airflow that told her they were descending. Her breathing was slow and controlled. 4 counts in, hold for 4, 4 counts out. Combat breathing. The kind that kept your heart rate down and your mind sharp when things got ugly. The crew chief's voice crackled over the internal comm system. 5 minutes to drop zone. Weather check shows tropical storm moving in faster than predicted. You've got maybe 18 hours before it hits. After that, you're looking at 0 visibility and flash flood conditions. Stone keyed his mic. Copy that. We'll be at the extractions point before the weather turns. The crew chief didn't respond, but Kira saw him exchange a look with the pilot. That look said everything. These jarheads have no idea what they're walking into. The helicopter banked hard. Kira felt the deck tilt beneath her boots. Through the open door, the first gray light of dawn was bleeding into the eastern sky. Enough light to see the landscape below starting to take shape. An endless maze of waterways and vegetation. Cypress trees rising like the masts of drowned ships. Mangroves forming impenetrable walls. Water the color of old pennies, hiding depths that could swallow a man whole. 1 minute, the crew chief called. The Marines stood checked to their gear one final time. 60-pound packs, weapons, ammunition, enough equipment to sustain them for 72 hours in one of the most hostile environments in North America. Kira stood last. Her pack weighed maybe 30 pounds. The Marines had noticed. They'd exchanged looks that said what their mouths didn't. She's not serious. She's not ready. She's going to slow us down. The helicopter flared nose up, bleeding speed, 30 feet above a small clearing barely large enough for the aircraft. The downdraft from the rotors turned the standing water below into a violent chop. Spray filled the air. The noise was apocalyptic. Go, go, go. The Marines fast roped down in textbook fashion, Stone first establishing security, then Rourke, then Sullivan, then Hawkins, each one hitting the ground and immediately moving to cover weapons up, scanning for threats. Professional, well-trained, confident. Kira went last. She grabbed the rope, wrapped her legs, and descended in a controlled slide that put her on the ground in 4 seconds. Her boots hit solid earth, and she immediately moved away from the landing zone, making room for the helicopter to depart. The Black Hawk pulled up, hard rotors clawing for altitude. The sound of its engines faded rapidly, swallowed by the immensity of the swamp. And then there was silence. Not true silence. The Everglades was never truly quiet, but the mechanical roar of civilization was gone, replaced by something older and more fundamental. The drip of water from broad leaves, the distant bellow of an alligator, the chittering of insects waking to the day, the rustle of things moving through undergrowth that didn't want to be seen. Stone checked his GPS unit, a ruggedized military model that cost more than most people's cars. Coordinates confirmed. We're 30 clicks from extraction. If we maintain a good pace, we can cover it in 2 days, hole up on day 3 and be ready for pickup. He started to move out, setting a hard pace through the thick vegetation. The other Marines fell in behind him, Rourke second, then Sullivan, then Hawkins bringing up the rear. Kira didn't follow immediately. She stood still, letting her senses adjust to the environment. Listened to the pattern of bird calls, watched the way the morning light filtered through the canopy, noted which direction the breeze was coming from and how the water was flowing. Small things, details that most people would miss. Details that could save your life. A flash of color caught her eye. There, 20 meters to the left of Stone's planned route, a cluster of bright orange fungi growing on a fallen log. Amanita caesarea, the Caesar's mushroom. It only grew in very specific conditions, rich soil, good drainage, high ground. She looked at Stone's route, looked at the fungi, made a decision. Sergeant Stone, her voice carried across the clearing without being loud, a trick of projection learned from years of having to make herself heard over gunfire and explosions. Stone stopped, turned. His expression was carefully neutral, but she could read the irritation underneath. Ma'am, your route takes you through that low ground ahead. See how the water's got that orange film on top? That's tannins from decaying vegetation. Means it's deep. Means it's been standing for weeks. You'll be waist deep in it within 100 meters. GPS shows solid ground, ma'am. GPS shows elevation data from satellites that might be 6 months out of date. The Everglades changes. Flood patterns shift. What was solid ground in January is a swamp in June. Stone's jaw tightened. He looked at his GPS, looked at the route Kira was suggesting, which angled off to the left toward higher ground marked by those telltale fungi. With respect, Lieutenant, I'm following my navigation plan. We deviate now, we throw off our entire timeline. You follow that route, Sergeant, and you throw off your timeline anyway because you'll be moving through chest-deep water at a quarter speed, not to mention announcing your presence to every predator in a 5-click radius. Rourke stepped forward. His voice had an edge. Ma'am, the sergeant has the navigation. That's his job. Your job is to observe. That's what the major said. Kira looked at him, saw the challenge in his eyes. This wasn't about navigation. This was about yesterday. This was about ego and pride and a man who'd been embarrassed and wanted to reassert dominance. Corporal, I'm offering tactical advice based on environmental expertise. You're free to ignore it. But in 6 hours, when you're soaked and cold and fighting leeches, remember this conversation. She didn't wait for a response, just adjusted her own pack and started walking in the direction she'd indicated. Not following Stone's route, not asking permission, just moving with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. For a moment, the four Marines stood frozen. This was insubordination. This was a breach of protocol. Stone was the platoon leader. His route was the route. You didn't just walk off and do your own thing. But then Sullivan, the youngest, the one with the least invested in ego and hierarchy, looked at the orange-filmed Waterstone's route would take them through, looked at the higher ground Kira was heading toward, made a choice. "Sergeant, I think she's right. That water looks deep." Stone turned on him, ready to snap, but then he actually looked at what Sullivan was pointing at, really looked. Saw the standing water, saw the film, saw the way the vegetation changed, becoming more aquatic, more sparse, signs that any experienced woodsman would recognize as deep water. His jaw worked. Pride versus pragmatism. Leading versus learning. Hawkins broke the silence. "Sarge, my old man, used to hunt gators out here. He always said, trust the land, not the technology. That water looks bad." Stone looked at his three Marines, looked at Kira's back already 50 meters away, and moving with an efficiency that made their heavy trudging look clumsy. Looked at his GPS, this expensive piece of equipment that was supposed to make navigation foolproof. "Fine," he said, the word coming out like broken glass. "We'll try her route. But if this adds more than an hour to our timeline, we're switching back to the original plan." They followed Kira into the higher ground. The difference was immediately apparent. The earth under their boots was firm, slightly elevated. The vegetation was different here. Less marsh grass, more hardwood trees. The going was easier, faster, and most importantly, dry. Kira set a pace that was sustainable. Not fast, not slow, just steady. Every half hour she'd stop, ostensibly to check her map, but actually to listen, to read the environment, to teach without making it obvious she was teaching. "Birds are quiet ahead," she'd say, pointing northwest. "Something moving through there. Probably gators heading to water. Or see that tree line, the way the cypress are leaning, storm damage from last hurricane season? Ground there is going to be unstable. Fallen trees create deadfalls. Easy to break an ankle. Or smell that, that's methane from decomposing vegetation. Means there's a sinkhole nearby. Watch your footing." Sullivan absorbed it all like a sponge. He'd pull out his own map, mark the details. She pointed out, asked questions. "Ma'am, how do you know about the methane? Is there a specific smell? Like rotten eggs mixed with swamp mud. You smell it, you stop moving. You probe the ground ahead with a stick before you take another step. Sinkholes in the Everglades can be 30 feet deep. You fall in, you're not coming out." Hawkins was listening too, though he tried to hide it. He'd adjust his route based on her observations, key his radio to mark waypoints she identified as dangerous. Rourke remained stubbornly silent, but even he was watching her, learning despite himself. Stone was the hardest sell. Every time Kira stopped to point something out, his hand would drift to his GPS, checking her observations against his electronic data. But increasingly, he was finding that she was right. The sinkholes were where she said they'd be. The game trails led to water sources. The high ground stayed high. By midday, they'd covered 12 clicks. Good time. Better than Stone's original plan would have achieved, because they hadn't spent 3 hours slogging through chest-deep water. They stopped for a break in a small clearing ringed by cypress trees. The sun was directly overhead now, brutal and unforgiving. The temperature had climbed into the mid-90s, and the humidity was approaching 100%. It felt like breathing through a wet towel. The Marines broke out their fancy ration packs, high-calorie, high-protein meals designed by food scientists to provide optimal nutrition. They tasted like cardboard, but they'd keep you going. Kira pulled out something different, a small cloth bag. From it, she produced what looked like beef jerky, but wasn't. Dried fish, smoked and salted, probably made it herself. Sullivan watched her eat. "Ma'am, is that fish? Mullet? Caught it in the Gulf, smoked it over mangrove wood. 1,500 calories per bag, high protein, no packaging waste. How long does it keep? Indefinitely if you store it right. I've got some that's 3 years old. Still good." Hawkins couldn't help himself. Why not just use the ration packs like us? They're designed for this. Kira took a drink from her canteen before answering. Ration packs work fine, but they make you dependent on supply chains, on logistics, on someone else providing for you. Out here, if you know what you're doing, the swamp provides everything you need, water. She pointed to a particular type of palm tree. Food, she gestured to the water. Shelter. She indicated the cypress trees with their broad canopies. If you rely on what you brought, you're always counting down to zero. If you learn to use what's here, you can stay indefinitely. Stone looked up from his GPS. We're not planning to stay indefinitely, ma'am. 72 hours, then extraction. Plans change, Sergeant. Equipment fails. Extractions get delayed. The swamp doesn't care about your timeline. It'll kill you just as dead on day 3 as day 1 if you're not prepared. Rourke finally spoke, his voice heavy with sarcasm. So what, we're supposed to live off the land like it's the 1800s? We've got technology. GPS, satellite comms, water filtration. We don't need to know how to catch fish or whatever. Kira looked at him. Her expression was neutral, but her eyes were sharp. Corporal, what's your current GPS battery level? Rourke checked. 73%. And when that runs out, I've got spare batteries. How many of 4? So you've got maybe 5 days of GPS usage if you're conservative. After that, Rourke's jaw set. After that, we navigate by map and compass, basic land nav. We all passed that course. Good. And your radio batteries? Hawkins answered that one. 8 spares. But the SAT radio is a power hog. In this humidity with all the signal interference, I'm burning through them fast. Maybe 3 days total. So after 3 days, you have no communication. The exercise is only 3 days, ma'am. Kira didn't argue, just took another bite of her smoked fish and looked out at the swamp with eyes that had seen too many plans fall apart to trust in timelines. The silence stretched out. The Marines finished their rations, packed the waste, and prepared to move again. But there was a shift in the dynamic. Something subtle. They were starting to pay attention, starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, this woman with her old pack and her dried fish knew something they didn't. Stone checked his GPS one more time. We're making good time. If we maintain this pace, we'll hit the coordinates for tonight's camp by 1800. Then his words cut off. Everyone heard it, a sound that didn't belong. That wasn't the organic noise of the swamp. A mechanical click, sharp, distinct, the sound of metal on metal. Kira's hand went up. Stop signal. The Marines froze. She tilted her head, listening with absolute focus. There. Again, northwest, maybe 200 meters out. And this time it was accompanied by voices. Low, speaking Spanish. Too far to make out words, but close enough to identify the language. Hawkins's eyes went wide. Upford doesn't speak Spanish. Stone's face had gone pale. Could be civilians, hikers, maybe. The distinct chatter of an AK-47 on full auto cut through the humid air like a chainsaw. 5-second burst. Then another. Then a third. Not firing at anything, just test firing, clearing a jam or checking function. That was not the sound of blank training rounds. That was the real thing. 30 rounds of 7.62 39 millimeters screaming through the jungle at 2,300 feet per second. Enough to cut a man in half. Sullivan's voice was barely a whisper. What the hell is that? Kira's face had changed, gone hard. The neutral observer mask replaced by something else, something colder. She pulled out her sat phone, checked the signal. Nothing. The storm moving in was creating too much atmospheric interference. She looked at Stone. Sergeant, we need to move, now, quietly, away from that sound. But the UPFOR, that's not UPFOR. That's cartel, drug smugglers using the Everglades as a route. They're armed with live ammunition, and they do not care about rules of engagement. Rourke's hand had gone to his M4. He started to unsling it. Then we engage. We're armed, we're trained. With training rounds, Corporal. Simunition, colored wax bullets designed to mark targets, not stop them. You open fire on actual cartel sicarios with training ammunition, and the only thing you'll accomplish is making them laugh while they kill you. The words hung in the humid air like a death sentence. Hawkins keyed his radio, trying to raise base. Base this is Bravo 6. We have hostile contact requesting immediate static. Pure white noise. The atmospheric interference was total. Stone's training kicked in, leadership in crisis, make a decision. Any decision was better than paralysis. We evade, move to secondary rally point, try to get comms working request extraction. Negative, Kira said. Her voice had absolute authority now. Not suggesting, not advising, commanding. Your secondary rally point is 4 clicks northwest. Same direction as those gunshots. You move that way, you walk right into them. Then what do you suggest, Lieutenant? Another burst of gunfire. Closer now, maybe 150 meters. They were moving, patrolling, sweeping the area, and then carried on the breeze words in Spanish. Kira's expression changed, went from hard to something worse, something that looked almost like fear. Ella está aquí, a male voice asking a question. Sí, el cazador lo confirmó, la fantasma ha regresado. Another voice answering, confirming. The Marines didn't understand Spanish, but Kira did, and what she heard made her blood run cold. Is she here? Yes, the hunter confirmed it. The Phantom has returned. They weren't just patrolling, they were hunting. Hunting for someone specific. And she had a terrible sinking certainty that the someone was her 2 years ago. Border operation in Texas. A cartel ambush on DEA agents. Kira's SEAL team had responded. She'd been the one who'd taken the shot. Center mass, through the scope of an M110 sniper rifle at 400 meters. The target had been Ramon Vega's brother, a cartel enforcer coordinating the ambush. 1 shot, 1 kill, mission success. But in the world of the cartels, blood demanded blood. Family demanded vendetta. And Ramon Vega called El Cazador, the hunter, had sworn that the woman who'd killed his brother would die screaming. The intelligence community had assured her it was just talk. Cartel bravado. Empty threats. Vega was in Mexico. She was in the United States. The border was a wall. She was safe. Except now she was in the Everglades, 30 clicks from civilization, with 4 Marines armed with training ammunition. And somewhere in the green hell around her, men with real guns were hunting. Not random, not coincidence. This was a trap, and she'd walked right into it. Stone was staring at her, waiting for orders he didn't want to take from her, but didn't know how to refuse. Lieutenant, what do we do? Kira's mind was racing, calculating, assessing. 4 Marines under her protection, limited armament, no communication, hostile forces of unknown number, storm approaching, extraction hours away, even if they could call for it. The equation didn't balance. Too many variables, too few solutions. But she'd been in worse situations. Somalia, Syria, Yemen, places where the odds were impossible and survival was a matter of will more than firepower. She made a decision. We go dark, no comms, no GPS, no electronics that emit signals. We move to the swamp, the deep water, where they won't expect us and can't follow easily. Rourke looked at the dark water visible through the trees, the kind of water that hid gators and snakes, and things that would kill you just as dead as bullets. Into that, are you insane? Into that, because those sicarios are hunters, Corporal, but they're land hunters. They'll stick to dry ground, to the trails. The deep swamp is where we have the advantage. What advantage? Will be moving through water up to our chests, our weapons will get fouled, we'll be sitting ducks. We'll be invisible, and I know how to move through water without leaving a trail. Do you trust me or not? The question hung there. Did they trust her? This woman who'd embarrassed their best fighter, who'd questioned their commanding officer, who'd led them off their planned route into unknown territory. Sullivan answered first. I trust you, ma'am. Hawkins nodded slowly. Yeah, me too. Stone looked at Rourke. The corporal's face was a war between pride and pragmatism, between ego and survival. Finally, slowly, he nodded. Fine, we do it your way. But if this goes wrong, Corporal, we're all dead anyway. Now move, quietly. Follow my exact footsteps. Don't break branches. Don't disturb water. We're ghosts now. We don't exist. She led them off the high ground and down into the dark water. The transition was immediate and brutal. One moment they were on relatively solid earth, The next, they were waist deep in water that felt like it was actively trying to pull them down. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. The smell of decay and organic rot was overwhelming. Kira moved through it like she'd been born to it, using cypress knees for handholds, reading the water surface to find the channels that were only knee-deep versus the ones that would swallow you whole, teaching them without words, just gestures. Step here, avoid there, hand signal for stop, hand signal for danger. Behind them, the voices continued. Closer. The cartel patrol was moving methodically, sweeping the area in a standard search pattern. Sullivan's foot slipped on a submerged root. He went down to his shoulders with a splash that sounded like a gunshot in the oppressive quiet. Everyone frozen. The voices stopped. Silence. Then rapid conversation in Spanish. They'd heard. They were coming to investigate. Kira made a decision. She pulled Sullivan upright, whispered directly into his ear. Don't move. Don't breathe loud. Stay exactly here. Then she turned to the others. Sergeant Stone, take these three. Move east, slowly, quietly. Find solid ground and hole up. I'll draw them away. Lieutenant, we don't leave people behind. You're not leaving me, Sergeant. I'm giving you an order. Get these men to safety. That's your mission now. What are you going to do? Kira's smile was cold, predatory. The smile of someone who'd hunted humans before and knew exactly how good she was at it. I'm going to remind them why they called me Phantom. She moved before Stone could argue, didn't run, didn't splash, just flowed through the water like smoke angling northwest, toward the voices, toward the danger. The Marines wanted to follow. Every instinct screamed back up their teammate, but Stone's training overrode instinct. She'd given an order. She was the senior special warfare operator. His job was to follow orders and protect his men. Move, he hissed. East, now. They moved. Behind them, Kira Brennan disappeared into the swamp like she'd never existed at all. The cartel patrol was 4 men, experienced, well-armed, each carrying an AK-47 variant and enough ammunition to fight a small war. They wore civilian clothes but moved with military precision, ex-Mexican special forces probably. Men who'd learned how to hunt and kill from the best, then sold those skills to the highest bidder. They were sweeping through the high ground, looking for the source of the splash they'd heard. Confident, professional, deadly. They never saw Kira coming. She was in the water, submerged to her nose, breathing through a hollow reed she'd cut from the marsh. A trick older than recorded history. Simple, effective, invisible. The first Sicario walked within 3 feet of her. She could have reached out and touched his boots. Instead, she waited, patient, still, a predator in her element. He passed. She rose from the water like a nightmare made flesh, no sound, no splash. Just there behind him, one hand covering his mouth, the other holding her knife against his throat. Not cutting, just pressure. A threat. She whispered in perfect Spanish, "Drop your weapon, or I open your throat." The man froze. The cold steel against his carotid artery was convincing. His AK-47 slipped from nerveless fingers and splashed into the water. How many? 7 total. 4 here, 3 at the rally point. Where's Vega? The man's hesitation was answer enough. Kira increased the pressure. A thin line of red appeared. The old sugar mill, 3 clicks north. He's waiting for you, Phantasma. He knew you'd come. How did he know? Your major told him, Blackwood. He's been paid. He led you here to die. The confirmation of what she'd suspected hit like a physical blow. Blackwood hadn't just been incompetent. He'd been actively working against them. This whole exercise had been designed to deliver her to Vega. The other Sicarios, where are they? Searching, looking for the Marines. Vega wants them alive. Wants you to watch them die before he kills you. Kira's grip tightened. This man had just told her he planned to hunt and kill 4 young Americans who'd done nothing except follow orders. The rage that filled her was cold, controlled, lethal. Change of plans. She applied pressure to his carotid artery. Not the knife, just her hand. The blood choke was instant. He went limp in 8 seconds. She lowered him into the water-used paracord to bind him to a submerged root, positioned his head above water so he wouldn't drown. Not mercy, just efficiency. A prisoner could be questioned later. A corpse couldn't. She took his AK-47 from the water, checked the action, cleared the barrel. It was a well-maintained weapon, probably 700 rounds of life left in it. Good enough. The second Sicario was 20 meters away, moving through thick vegetation. Kira ghosted through the water, using the sound of his movement to mask her own. Got within 10 meters. 5. 3. He sensed something, started to turn. Too slow. Kira surged from the water, slammed the AK's stock into his solar plexus. The blow drove every molecule of air from his lungs. He folded like paper. She caught him before he could fall, and Make Noise applied the same blood choke, bound him the same way. 2 down. The third Sicario was smarter. Or maybe just luckier. He'd heard something, not enough to identify it, just enough to make him cautious. He'd taken cover behind a massive cypress tree, his weapon up scanning. Kira circled wide, used the water, came at him from an angle he couldn't see. But he was good, trained. He sensed her presence at the last second and started to swing his weapon around. She went low, swept his legs. He went down hard. His finger found the trigger by reflex, and the AK roared, sending a burst of automatic fire into the canopy. Birds exploded from the trees, their wings hammering the air. The sound was a disaster. Every Sicario within a mile now knew exactly where they were. Kira didn't have time for subtlety. She stripped the weapon from his hands, reversed it, and drove the stock into his temple. Not hard enough to kill. Hard enough to scramble his brain for the next hour. He went limp. The fourth Sicario was already running toward the sound of gunfire. Kira could hear him crashing through the undergrowth, though, maybe 30 seconds out. No time to hide, no time to prepare. She made a choice, left the 3 bound Sicarios, took their weapons, all 3 AK-47s, slung them across her back. The weight was enormous, but she'd carried worse. Then she ran, not away, toward the sound of the fourth man, toward danger, because sometimes the best defense was violence of action so sudden and overwhelming that the enemy's decision-making process collapsed. She saw him through the trees, big guy, probably 6'4", 220, moving fast for someone his size. Weapon up and ready. Kira stepped out from behind a tree directly in front of him. His eyes went wide. He started to bring his weapon to bear. Too slow, too surprised, too focused on finding an enemy in the distance to process one standing 8 feet away. Kira's first round took him in the right shoulder. Not center mass, not a kill shot, a disabling shot. The 7.62 millimeter round shattered his clavicle and spun him like a top. His weapon flew from nerveless fingers. He tried to get up, tried to reach for a sidearm at his belt. Kira's second round went into the ground 6 inches from his head. The message was clear. Stay down or the next one goes between your eyes. He stayed down. She secured him the same way she'd secured the others. Zip-tied, gagged, bound to immovable objects, not corpses, prisoners. 4 Sicarios neutralized. 0 friendly casualties. 0 enemy KIA. It was the kind of operation that would never make the news, that would never be acknowledged, but that represented the highest level of special warfare competence. Violence applied with surgical precision. Force used in exact proportion to necessity, but the gunfire had announced her position to everyone within a mile. The 3 Sicarios at the rally point would be coming. And Vega, always Vega the hunter who'd sworn to kill her. The storm was building too. She could feel it in the pressure change, see it in the darkening sky. Maybe 2 hours before it hit. After that, visibility would be 0. Movement would be nearly impossible. She needed to find the Marines, needed to get them to safety, needed to call for extraction. But first she needed to send a message. She pulled out her sat phone. The signal was weak but present. Enough, she typed rapidly. Blackwood compromised, cartel insertion confirmed, 4 hostiles neutralized, 3 plus HVT still active. Marines separated, storm inbound, request immediate QRF. She hit send and watched the message compress and encrypt. Watched it launch into the satellite network. Watched it bounce through encrypted channels to reach Colonel Booker Thorne, who was supposedly retired, supposedly civilian, supposedly out of the game. But men like Thorne never really retired. They just waited for the call. Her phone buzzed 30 seconds later. Inbound, Thorn. 2 words, but they meant everything. Help was coming. An old warrior was strapping on his armor one more time. A promise made over a grave was being kept. Kira allowed herself one moment of relief, just one. Then she shoved the phone back in her pocket, checked the 3 captured AK-47s, and started moving east. Toward the Marines, toward 4 young men who were probably terrified and definitely alone, and absolutely counting on her to get them home alive. The swamp pressed in from all sides. The water was rising as the storm approached. The sky was the color of a bruise. And somewhere out there, Ramon Vega the hunter was waiting. But Kira Brennan hadn't earned the call sign Phantom by accident. She hadn't become one of the first female Navy SEALs by being anything less than exceptional. And she hadn't survived a decade of combat deployments by giving up when the odds were bad. She moved through the water like a ghost. Behind her, 4 bound sicarios would wake in a few hours with stories about the woman who'd appeared from nowhere and disappeared just as fast. The storm hit like the fist of an angry god. One moment the sky was bruised purple. The next it opened up and emptied itself onto the Everglades with biblical fury. Rain came down in sheets so thick it was like standing under a waterfall. Visibility dropped to maybe 10 feet. The temperature plummeted 15 degrees in as many minutes. What had been oppressive heat became a cold that seeped into bones and refused to leave. Staff Sergeant Garrett Stone huddled with his 3 Marines under the spreading branches of a massive cypress tree. It provided almost no shelter. They were soaked to the skin within seconds. Their expensive Gore-Tex gear, designed to keep them dry in any conditions, was utterly overwhelmed by the sheer volume of water falling from the sky. Stone's GPS was dead. The screen had fogged over from the inside moisture having penetrated the supposedly waterproof seal. His backup GPS was showing error messages. The satellite signal couldn't punch through the storm. They were navigationally blind. Hawkins's radio was still functional but useless. Every frequency was pure static. The atmospheric interference from the storm was creating an electromagnetic wall that no signal could penetrate. They were communications dark. Sullivan's ankle, injured from the slip hours ago, had swollen to the size of a softball despite the compression bandage. He was trying not to show pain, but his face was pale and drawn. Every step was agony. Rourke was the only one who seemed relatively intact, and even he looked rattled. His hands kept checking his weapon, his gear, his ammunition. The nervous ticks of a man whose world had stopped making sense. "How long do we wait?" Sullivan asked. His voice was barely audible over the roar of the rain. Stone checked his watch. Kira had been gone for 3 hours. 3 hours since she'd led the cartel patrol away from them. 3 hours of silence and waiting and wondering if she was dead. "We give her until dark, then we move to the extraction point and pray comms come back up." "Sarge, that's another 18 clicks through this." Hawkins gestured at the howling storm. "In zero visibility. With no GPS, we'll be walking blind." "You got a better idea, Corporal?" Hawkins didn't. None of them did. They were Force Recon Marines, supposedly the best of the best, and they were huddled under a tree like lost Boy Scouts waiting for someone to rescue them. Rourke finally voiced what they were all thinking. "She's dead. Has to be. 4 armed sicarios, she had training rounds. There's no way she could have..." The voice came from directly behind them. "Could have what, Corporal?" All 4 Marines spun weapons, coming up with trained reflexes. Kira stood 3 feet away. None of them had heard her approach. Not a footstep, not a splash, not a breath. She'd simply materialized from the rain like a ghost given form. She was soaked, covered in mud and vegetation. Her small pack was gone, replaced by 3 AK-47 rifles slung across her back. Her face was streaked with camouflage paint that was running in the rain. Her eyes were hard and bright and very much alive. Stone lowered his weapon, relief flooding through him so powerfully it made his knees weak. "Lieutenant, we thought..." "I know what you thought. You were wrong." Shiwa slung one of the AK-47s and handed it to Stone. 7.62 by 39mm 30-round magazine. Full auto capable. "You know how to run an AK, ma'am." Stone took the weapon. It was real. Heavy. Lethal. Not training equipment, but actual military hardware. "Yes, ma'am, but where did you..." "The 4 sicarios who were hunting us don't need them anymore." She handed the second rifle to Rourke, the third to Hawkins. "I left them tied up about 2 clicks west. When this storm clears, someone will find them. Until then, we have bigger problems. Sullivan stood up, wincing as his injured ankle took weight. Ma'am, what problems? Kira pulled out her sat phone. The screen was cracked but functional. She showed them a message she'd received 10 minutes ago. 3 more hostiles at Rally Point 4 clicks north. High-value target confirmed at Old Sugar Mill 7 clicks northeast. Target is Ramon Vega, El Cazador. He's the one who organized this. Paid Major Blackwood to feed him intelligence. Knew we'd be here. This whole exercise was a setup to deliver me to him. The words landed like bombs. Blackwood, their commanding officer, had sold them out, had knowingly sent them into a trap, had betrayed everything the uniform was supposed to stand for. Rourke's face went through several shades of red. That son of a bitch, I'll kill him. I swear to God, You'll do nothing, Corporal, because Blackwood is already in custody. Federal agents picked him up 2 hours ago. He's facing charges for conspiracy, accepting bribes, and treason. His career is over. His life is over. Our job now is to survive and get home. Stone's tactical mind was already working the problem. 7 clicks to the sugar mill, another 15 to extraction. In this storm with Sullivan injured, that's maybe 18 hours of movement. We don't have 18 hours. The exercise ends in 6 hours. They'll send search and rescue if we're not at the pickup point. They'll try to send search and rescue, Kira corrected. But this storm is forecast to last for 12 hours. No helicopter can fly in this. We're on our own until it clears. Then we hole up, wait it out, find shelter, and Vega's men find us. They know this swamp better than we do. They have actual shelter to retreat to. We're exposed, injured, running low on supplies. She looked at each of them in turn. We have one option. We go on the offensive. Hawkins blinked water out of his eyes. Offensive, ma'am. There's 5 of us, 1 injured against at least 4 hostiles, probably more on their home territory. That's not tactics. That's suicide. Kira's smile was cold. It would be, if we fought them on their terms. But we're not going to do that. We're going to use their assumptions against them. They think we're running, scared, lost. They think they're the hunters and we're the prey. We're going to flip that script. She knelt down and pulled out her map. It was laminated, waterproof, covered in handwritten notes accumulated over years. She spread it on the wet ground and the Marines gathered around. The sugar mill is here. Built in the 1920s, abandoned in the 50s. It's on a small island, only one approach by land. The rest is deep water. Vega is using it as a headquarters because it's defensible and isolated. Her finger traced a route on the map. 3 sicarios at this rally point that are supposed to drive us toward the mill. Classic hammer and anvil. They push Vega waits, we get caught between them. That's their plan. So we avoid the rally point circle around. No sergeant, we hit the rally point. We eliminate those 3 sicarios. We take their weapons, their supplies, their intelligence. Then we use the storm as cover and assault the mill. The 4 Marines stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Rourke found his voice first. Ma'am, with respect, that's insane. We're not a strike team. We're a recon platoon. Our job is to gather information and avoid contact, not kick down doors and clear buildings. Corporal, your job was to complete a training exercise. That job ended the moment live rounds started flying. Your job now is survival. And the only way we survive is if we remove the threat. Vega won't stop hunting. He's got resources, men, and motivation. We run, we die tired. We hide, we die cold. We fight, we have a chance. Stone was studying the map. His tactical training was warring with his common sense. Even if we could take the rally point, even if we could reach the mill, there's no guarantee we can breach it. We don't know how many men Vega has. We don't know the building's layout. We don't have explosives for breaching. We don't have heavy weapons. We have surprise sergeant. We have skill. We have desperation. And we have me. She looked up from the map. I've done this before. Iraq, Syria, Yemen, small unit direct action against hardened targets. It's what SEALs do. Trust me to get you through this. Sullivan, the youngest, the one with the least to lose by believing, spoke up. I trust you, ma'am. You've kept us alive this far. If you say we can do this, I believe you. Hawkins nodded slowly. Yeah, I'm in. Rourke looked at Stone, the sergeant looked at his three Marines, looked at Kira, looked at the map and the impossible odds and the choice between certain death and unlikely survival. He made the call. All right, Lieutenant, we do it your way. What's the plan? Kira's smile was predatory. The plan is we become what they fear. We become ghosts. We become death in the swamp. We become the phantom. The rally point was a piece of high ground barely 50 meters across. Three sicarios had set up a temporary camp with tarps for shelter and a small fire hidden under an overhang to mask the smoke. They were confident, comfortable, waiting for their companions to drive the Americans toward them like deer toward hunters. They never expected the deer to have teeth. Kira led the Marines in from three sides. She'd split them up despite Stone's protests. Sullivan, with his injured ankle, was positioned 300 meters out with one of the AK-47s. His marksmanship ratings had been the highest in the platoon. Injury or no injury, he could still shoot. Stone and Hawkins came from the east, Rourke from the west, Kira from the north through the water, silent and invisible. The sicarios were talking, laughing. One was cooking something over the fire. Another was checking his weapon. The third was on watch, but watching the wrong direction. Watching for people fleeing through the swamp, not stalking through it. Kira signaled. 3 fingers. 2, 1. Sullivan's shot broke the silence. 300 meters through howling wind and rain. An impossible shot by any reasonable standard. The round took the watchman in the shoulder, spinning him and dropping him to the ground. The other 2 sicarios reacted instantly. Training kicking in, they grabbed weapons, moved to cover, scanned for threats. Stone and Hawkins opened up from the east. Controlled bursts. 3-round bursts the way they'd been trained. Not trying to kill, just trying to suppress. Keep heads down. Create chaos. Rourke came from the west, close to within 20 meters before the sicarios even knew he was there. His first burst was high, intentionally high, over their heads, making them think the threat was in one direction. They turned toward Rourke, bringing their weapons to bear, about to return fire. Kira emerged from the water behind them. Alto, stop! They spun, saw a woman alone, soaking wet weapon pointed at them, saw an easy target, started to raise their AK-47s. Kira's first round took the weapon out of the first sicario's hands, literally shot it out of his grip. The AK went flying. His hand was intact, but the shock made him fall backwards. Her second round hit the ground between the second sicario's feet. Not missing, warning. Al suelo, ahora, on the ground. Now, they complied. Training warred with instinct, but the cold certainty in her voice made the choice for them. They went prone, hands behind heads. Stone and Hawkins moved in, secured them with zip ties, searched them for weapons, intelligence, anything useful. They found radios, tuned to a specific frequency. Kira keyed one. Vega, this is Phantom. Your men are done, your operation is over. Leave now and you live. Stay and you die. Choose. The response came in heavily accented English. Ah, Phantasma. So you do remember me. Good. I have thought of you every day for 2 years. Every day since you murdered my brother. And now you are here, in my swamp, with nowhere to run. Your brother chose his path. He ambushed federal agents. I responded. That's not murder. That's war. You think I care about your justifications? You think laws and rules mean anything to me? You killed my blood, my familia, and now I will kill you. But first I will kill these boys you try to protect. I will make you watch. I will make you listen to their screams. And then only then will I grant you the mercy of death. Kira's voice was ice. You're welcome to try Vega. I'm coming for you. And when I get there, you're going to regret every decision that led you to this moment. She released the radio key, looked at the 3 bound sicarios. They were staring at her with a mixture of fear and respect. How many men does Vega have at the mill? She asked in Spanish. The one with the shoulder wound answered. Pain made him honest. 5, plus Vega. But the mill is fortified. Heavy doors, narrow approaches. You cannot win. We'll see. She turned to Stone. Sergeant, inventory their supplies. Take anything useful. We move in 20 minutes. The haul from the rally point was significant. More weapons, more ammunition, food, water, medical supplies, and most importantly, intelligence. A hand-drawn map showing the mill's layout, guard positions, entry points, Vega's location. Kira studied it while the Marines prepared. The mill was exactly as the Sicario had described. A fortress, designed in an era before modern warfare but still defensible against small arms. Heavy masonry walls, minimal windows, one main entrance, one loading dock entrance. Both would be covered by interlocking fields of fire. A frontal assault would be suicide. Good thing she wasn't planning a frontal assault. Hawkins, can you work their radio? Yes, ma'am. Same frequency we captured. I can monitor their communications. Do it. I want to know every word they say. Stone housed Sullivan's ankle. Swollen, but he can still move. Says he can shoot. Good, he's our overwatch. Find him a position with sight lines to the mill's entrance. 300 meters out. He provides covering fire if things go loud. And if things stay quiet, we don't need them. But things never stay quiet. She looked at Rourke, the big corporal who'd grabbed her arm a lifetime ago, who'd been humiliated and angry and resentful, who was now looking at her with something that might have been respect. Corporal, I need you for something dangerous. Ma'am, everything about this is dangerous. Fair point, but this is especially dangerous. The loading dock entrance, it'll be guarded, at least 2 men. I need a distraction, something loud, something that draws attention. Think you can handle that? Rourke's grin was fierce. Ma'am, loud is my specialty. Kira nodded, turned to Stone and Hawkins. You two are with me. We're going through the water. Around the back. There's a drainage culvert here. She pointed to the map. Probably hasn't been used in 70 years. Probably full of debris. Possibly collapsed. But it's our best shot at getting inside without being seen. Stone looked at the map, looked at the route she was proposing, looked at her. Ma'am, that's a suicide run. Even if the culvert is open, even if we get inside, we'll be in the middle of a hostile controlled building with no backup and no exit strategy. Correct, Sergeant, which is why they won't expect it, which is why it'll work. She stood up, checked her weapons. The AK-47 she'd taken from the first Sicario, a sidearm she'd acquired from the rally point. Her knife. Not much, but it had been enough before. We move in 10 minutes. Sullivan gets into position first. Rourke waits for my signal. Stone, Hawkins, you're with me. Questions? Sullivan raised his hand. His young face was pale but determined. Ma'am, what if things go wrong? What if we get separated? Kira looked at him. This kid who was barely old enough to buy beer, who'd signed up to serve his country and had ended up in a swamp fighting cartel sicarios because his commanding officer had sold him out. Private things are already wrong. We're just making them less wrong. If we get separated, you complete the mission. You eliminate the threat. You survive. You go home and you tell people what happened here. You make sure Blackwood's betrayal doesn't get swept under the rug. You make sure the truth comes out. Can you do that? Sullivan nodded. His hands weren't shaking anymore. Yes, ma'am, I can do that. Good, then let's move. The storm had intensified if that was even possible. The rain was a solid wall of water. Visibility was down to 5 feet. The wind howled through the cypress trees like the screams of the damned. It was the worst possible conditions for movement, which made it perfect for infiltration. Sullivan took his position 300 meters from the mill. He found a slight rise, dug himself into the mud and vegetation, and set up the AK-47 on an improvised rest made from branches. The scope was crude but functional. He could see the mill's entrance, could see movement inside, could make the shot if he needed to. His ankle throbbed with every heartbeat, but he ignored it. Pain was temporary, mission was everything. Rourke moved to the loading dock entrance. He had a plan, a stupid plan, a plan that would probably get him killed. But it was his plan, and he was committed. He gathered debris, dead wood, dried palm fronds that were miraculously still dry under an overhang, arranged them near the loading dock, added some fuel from the captured supplies, created what was basically a large bonfire waiting to happen. Then he settled in to wait for Kira's signal. Kira, Stone, and Hawkins went into the water. The approach to the drainage culvert was 200 meters of chest-deep swamp, the kind of water that hid alligators and snakes and parasites that could burrow into your skin and lay eggs. The kind of water that in better times you wouldn't enter without a hazmat suit and a prayer. But these weren't better times. Kira led, moving slowly, testing each step before committing weight, using a stick to probe ahead for sinkholes, stopping every few meters to listen, to feel, to sense the environment. Behind her, Stone and Hawkins followed. They'd stopped questioning her, stopped doubting. They'd seen what she could do. They'd watched her take down trained killers with nothing but skill and will. They believed. The drainage culvert was exactly where the old map said it would be. A concrete pipe maybe 4 feet in diameter, half submerged, overgrown with vegetation. It looked impassable. Looked like it had been sealed by 70 years of decay and neglect. Kira pulled away the vegetation, peered inside. The pipe extended into darkness. Water flowed out of it in a sluggish stream, which meant it was open on the other end, which meant it was passable. Maybe. "I'll go first," she whispered. "If I don't come back in 5 minutes, abort. Get to extraction. Call for help." Stone grabbed her arm. "Ma'am, you're not going alone." "Sergeant, with respect, ma'am, we're a team. Teams don't split up. We go together or not at all." Kira looked at him, saw the determination in his eyes. The same look she'd seen in the eyes of every good operator she'd ever worked with. The look that said, "I'm with you until the end." She nodded. "Together then. Stay close. Stay quiet. If I stop, you stop. If I signal danger, you freeze. Understood." Understood. They entered the culvert. The pipe was tight, claustrophobic. The water was knee-deep and moving slowly, which meant debris had accumulated. Kira had to push through masses of rotted vegetation, rusted metal things she couldn't identify and didn't want to. The smell was overwhelming. Decay and mold and organic rot concentrated in an enclosed space. Behind her, Stone was breathing through his mouth, trying not to gag. Hawkins was doing the same. They crawled, 50 feet, 100. The pipe seemed to go on forever. Kira's hands touched things in the water, soft things, hard things, things that moved. She ignored them all. Focused on forward movement, on the mission. Light appeared ahead, faint, diffused through debris. But light, the exit. Kira reached it and stopped. The opening was partially blocked by a metal grate, rusted, corroded, but still solid enough to be an obstacle. She tested it, pushed, pulled. It gave slightly but didn't break. Stone moved up beside it. Between them, they worked the grate. Slowly, quietly, the rust crumbled, the metal bent. After 5 minutes of patient effort, they'd created an opening large enough to squeeze through. Kira went first. She emerged into a dark space, a basement or storage area, concrete floor, stone walls, no windows, one door visible across the room, light seeping underneath it. Stone and Hawkins came through behind her. They were covered in filth, soaking wet, shivering from cold and adrenaline, but alive, inside, undetected. Kira moved to the door, pressed her ear against it, listened. Voices above. Spanish. 2 men arguing about something. Footsteps on the floor above. Heavy. Boots. She looked at Stone, held up 2 fingers. 2 hostiles directly above. Unknown number elsewhere. Stone nodded, checked his AK-47, chambered around. Ready? Hawkins did the same. Kira pulled out the radio she'd taken from the rally point Sicarios. Keyed it once. A single click. The signal. 300 meters away, Sullivan saw the signal. A brief flash of light from inside the mill, barely visible through the storm. But there, he settled his cheek against the AK stock, controlled his breathing, waited. At the loading dock, Rourke heard the click on his own radio. He struck a match, touched it to the carefully prepared bonfire. The flames caught instantly, roared to life, 20 feet high within seconds. Bright enough to be seen through the storm, hot enough to be felt from 50 feet away, loud enough to draw attention. Inside the mill, someone shouted, "Fuego, fuego en el muelle, fire, fire at the dock." Footsteps thundered overhead, running. The 2 men who'd been arguing were moving, responding to the threat, leaving their positions. Kira opened the door. The room beyond was a large open space, the main floor of the old mill, rusted machinery, collapsed conveyor belts, shadows and darkness broken by a few battery-powered lanterns. And men. She counted 3, no 4, and all moving toward the loading dock entrance, weapons in hand, focused on the fire, leaving their backs exposed. Kira stepped out of the shadows like death incarnate. "Alto, stop!" They spun, saw her, saw Stone and Hawkins flanking her, saw weapons pointed at them with absolute certainty. The smart ones froze, hands going up, weapons lowering. The stupid one tried to be a hero, tried to bring his weapon up, tried to take the shot. Sullivan's round took him in the shoulder, 300 meters through wind and rain and limited visibility. An impossible shot. But Sullivan made it anyway because he'd been paying attention when Kira taught, because he'd learned to trust his skills instead of his technology. The Sicario went down. Not dead, wounded, crying out in pain. The other 3 dropped their weapons, went prone, hands behind heads. They'd seen enough. This wasn't worth dying for. Stone and Hawkins moved in, secured them. Hawkins spoke enough Spanish to get them to answer questions. "Where's Vega?" "Upstairs, 2nd floor, office." "How many with him?" 2, his personal guards, the best. "Armed?" "Of course armed. AKs, pistols, body armor. You cannot win." Kira smiled. "We've already won. We're inside. Your men are down." The fire at the dock was a diversion. The real assault came from where you weren't looking. Classic misdirection. Your boss should have expected it. She looked at Stone. "Sergeant, secure this floor. Hawkins, get on that radio and tell Rourke to fall back to Sullivan's position. I'm going upstairs." Stone stepped in front of her. "Ma'am, I'm going with you." "Sergeant, not a request, Lieutenant. You're not facing Vega alone. 2 is better than 1. That's basic tactics." Kira wanted to argue, wanted to send him away, keep him safe. But he was right. 2 was better than 1. And she'd promised to bring these Marines home. All of them, including the stubborn sergeant who decided he trusted her. "Fine, stay behind me. Watch for crossfire. If things go loud, you shoot to wound, not kill. We need Vega alive for interrogation. And if he doesn't give us that option, then you do what you have to do." They moved to the stairs, old wooden steps that creaked under their boots, no way to climb quietly. Stealth was over. This was the final approach. At the top of the stairs was a hallway. 3 doors, 2 closed, 1 open. The open door showed an office, desk, chairs, maps on the wall, and a man. Ramon Vega stood with his back to them, looking out a window at the storm. He was smaller than Kira expected, maybe 5'8", thin, almost fragile looking. But she'd learned long ago that the most dangerous men often came in the smallest packages. 2 guards flanked him. Large men, professional, body armor under their shirts, weapons held with easy competence. They saw Kira and Stone, saw the weapons pointed at them, didn't react, didn't raise their guns, just waited for orders from their boss. Vega turned slowly. His face was scarred, burns on one side, the kind that spoke of an explosion survived but not escaped. One eye was milky white, blind. The other was dark and filled with an intelligence that was absolutely chilling. "Phantasma," he said. His voice was soft, almost gentle. "You came. You invited me. It would have been rude to refuse." "Invited? Yes, that is one word for it." He gestured to his guards. "Lower your weapons. She will not shoot. Not yet. She wants to talk, to understand. It is the American way. Everything must be explained, justified, made right." The guards lowered their AK-47s, not dropping them, just pointing them at the floor instead of at Kira. Stone kept his weapon up. Didn't trust this. Didn't like it. Vega walked to his desk, sat down, folded his hands like a businessman in a meeting. 2 years ago, you killed my brother, Miguel. He was younger than me, smarter than me, funnier than me. He had 3 children, a wife, a life, and you ended it with 1 bullet. Your brother was coordinating an ambush on DEA agents. He was armed. He was a threat. I neutralized that threat. Neutralize, such a clean word, so clinical. You neutralized my brother the way I might neutralize a rat in my warehouse. Just business. just necessity. Vega's hand moved, not fast, not threatening, just picked up a photograph from his desk and held it out. Look, please indulge me. Kira didn't move closer, didn't take the bait. I've seen the intelligence photos. I know who your brother was. No. You know what your intelligence agencies told you he was? Cartel enforcer. Criminal. But you do not know who he was. Look at the photo, Phantasma, please. Something in his voice made her look. Stone tensed beside her but didn't interfere. The photo showed a man in his 30s, handsome, smiling, surrounded by children. A wife beside him. They were at a birthday party. Balloons, cake, joy. That photo was taken 3 days before you killed him, Vega said quietly. 3 days before you made those children orphans. Before you made that woman a widow. Before you destroyed my family. Kira felt something twist in her chest. Guilt. The weight of the choices she'd made. The lives she'd ended in service of her country. But she'd learned to live with that weight. Had to. Because the alternative was paralysis. I'm sorry for your loss, she said and meant it. I'm sorry for those children. But your brother made choices. He chose the cartel. He chose violence. He chose to put himself between me and my mission. I didn't want to kill him, but I wouldn't change the decision. Vega's good eye studied her, looking for weakness, for doubt, for anything he could exploit. He found nothing. No, he said finally, you would not change it, because you are a soldier, because soldiers do what they are told, because your conscience is clean as long as you follow orders. That's not... It is exactly right, Phantasma. You do not see yourself as a murderer. You see yourself as a warrior, as righteous, as necessary. And perhaps you are. Perhaps in your American justice, killing my brother was right. He stood up. His guards tensed, but didn't move. But in my justice, in the justice of family and blood, and a honored palm, you are guilty, and guilty must be punished. So you set this trap, paid Blackwood, sent your men all to get revenge. No, not revenge, justice. There is a difference. Is their looks the same from where I'm standing? Vega smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Perhaps, but I will never know. Because you are going to kill me now, you and your young sergeant. You will shoot me and my guards. You will claim self-defense. And you will go home and receive medals for heroism. While I will be buried in an unmarked grave and my nieces and nephews will grow up knowing their uncle was killed by the same woman who killed their father. Kira's finger was on the trigger. 1 pound of pressure, maybe 2. That's all it would take. End this, end him, end the threat. But something made her stop. I'm not going to kill you, Vega. His eyebrow rose. No, you're going to surrender. You and your guards. You're going to face trial, federal charges, conspiracy, attempted murder, bribery of a military officer. You'll spend the rest of your life in a supermax prison. No windows, no visitors. 23 hours a day in a concrete box. That's justice. Not a bullet, not martyrdom, just consequences. Vega laughed. The sound was bitter. You think prison frightens me? I have been in Mexican prisons. I have survived things you cannot imagine. American prison would be a vacation. Then you'll have a lot of time to think about the choices that led you here. A lot of time to remember your brother. A lot of time to regret. She lowered her weapon slightly, not holstering it, just lowering the muzzle. Tell your guards to drop their weapons. Come with us peacefully. Or we do this the hard way and people die. Your choice. For a long moment, Vega didn't move, didn't speak. The only sound was the rain hammering against the windows and the distant thunder of the storm. Then he nodded to his guards. Do as she says. The 2 large men looked at each other, looked at their boss, looked at the determination in Kira's eyes and the readiness in Stone's stance. They lowered their weapons, set them on the ground, stepped back, hands raised. Stone moved in quickly, zip-tied them with practiced efficiency, searched them for hidden weapons, found 2 knives, 3 pistols, and a grenade. Secured it all. Kira kept her weapon on Vega. Turn around, hands behind your back. Vega complied. Stone secured him as well. It was over. The hunt, the trap, the revenge plot All of it. Over. Kira keyed her radio. Sullivan, Rourke, Hawkins. Status. Three voices responded in quick succession. All alive, all secure. Mission complete. Exfil in 30 minutes. Storms breaking. Helicopter inbound. We're going home. She looked at Vega, at the man who'd spent 2 years planning this, who'd corrupted a Marine officer, who'd sent men to kill her, who'd failed. You said soldiers follow orders and call it justice, she said quietly. Maybe you're right. Maybe that's all I am. But I'm also a SEAL, and SEALs bring everyone home, even the people who tried to kill us, even you. Vega's good eye met hers. Something that might have been respect flickered there. You are a strange woman, Phantasma. In another life, another time we might have been friends. In another life, your brother might have made different choices. But we live in this one. And in this one, you're going to prison. The sound of helicopter rotors cut through the diminishing rain. The UH-60 that appeared through the breaking clouds wasn't the standard extraction bird. It was civilian-marked, flown by a pilot who had no business being in a combat zone. Kira moved to the window and smiled. Colonel Booker Thorne was at the controls. The old warrior had kept his word. Behind her, Stone was helping the wounded Sicario from the first floor. Hawkins was coordinating with the helicopter. Rourke and Sullivan were making their way back from their positions. 4 Marines who'd started this exercise as cocky, arrogant, dismissive of the woman assigned to observe them. 4 Marines who were ending it as believers, as students, as men who'd learned that competence had no gender. That skill was skill, that a real operator was defined by actions, not assumptions. The helicopter touched down. Federal agents poured out. They'd been waiting just outside the storm's edge, waiting for the all clear, waiting to mop up. They took custody of Vega and his men, read them their rights, loaded them into the chopper. Major Blackwood was already in custody at the base, his career over, his freedom forfeit, his betrayal complete. The agent in charge approached Kira, held out his hand. Lieutenant Brennan, hell of a jippo. JSOC will want a full debrief, but off the record, that was some of the finest small unit action I've seen in 20 years. Kira shook his hand. Just doing my job. Your job was to observe and report. You went way beyond that. My job was to bring those Marines home alive. Everything else was just details. The agent nodded, stepped back, let her go. Kira walked to where the 4 Marines were waiting. They looked terrible, covered in mud and blood and filth, exhausted, injured, but alive. All of them alive. Stone stepped forward, came to attention, saluted. It was a formal gesture, an acknowledgement of rank. But it was more than that. It was respect. Earned respect. The kind that couldn't be demanded or assumed but had to be won through action. Kira returned the salute. Outstanding work, Sergeant. All of you. You performed above and beyond. Your country should be proud. Rourke stepped forward. The big corporal who'd grabbed her arm a lifetime ago, who'd been humiliated, who'd learned. He held out his hand. Ma'am, I owe you an apology for the way I treated you, for what I said, for what I thought. I was wrong. You're the best operator I've ever worked with. Gender doesn't matter. Ill matters. You taught me that. Kira shook his hand. You taught yourself, Corporal. I just gave you the opportunity. Take that lesson into your next assignment. Pass it on to the next generation. Sullivan limped forward, ankle still swollen, but his face bright with something that looked like pride. Ma'am, my grandfather always said the measure of a warrior isn't how they fight. It's who they protect. You protected us, brought us home. He'd say you're the real deal. Your grandfather sounds like a wise man. Honor his memory by being the kind of Marine he'd be proud of. Hawkins was last, the cocky radio operator who'd lost his smirk and found something better. Purpose. Ma'am, I'm putting in for SEAL training, BUDS, the whole pipeline. Because if you can do it, if you can be that good, then I want to see if I have what it takes. Kira smiled. Then try Corporal. Give it everything. And when Hell Week comes, when you're cold and wet and tired and every part of you wants to quit, remember this. Remember the Everglades. Remember that the only easy day was yesterday. And keep going. Colonel Thorne approached, the old man who'd kept his promise, who'd flown through a hurricane to extract them, who'd watched over her like he'd promised her father he would. Brennan, time to go. She nodded. started to walk to the helicopter. Stone's voice stopped her. Lieutenant, what you said to Vega about bringing everyone home, about justice versus revenge, did you mean it? Kira turned back. Every word, Sergeant. We're not killers, we're warriors. There's a difference. We use violence when necessary, but we don't seek it, don't celebrate it, don't let it define us. That's what separates us from people like Vega. Remember that. She climbed into the helicopter. The turbines spooled up. The rotors bit air. As they lifted off, Kira looked down at the swamp, at the green hell that had tried to kill them and failed, at the sugar mill where justice had been served without firing a shot, at four young Marines who'd learned lessons that would serve them for the rest of their careers. The helicopter banked toward home, toward safety, toward the world beyond the swamp. But Kira knew the truth. The swamp was always there. The green hell was always waiting. For every operator who thought they were good enough, strong enough, smart enough to master it. The swamp had no mercy. It had no conscience. It just was. And surviving it didn't make you invincible. It just made you ready for the next challenge, the next mission, the next impossible task that someone would hand you because you'd proven you could handle the impossible. That was the life. That was the job. That was being a SEAL. The helicopter disappeared into the breaking clouds. Behind them, the storm was ending. The sun was fighting through. The Everglades was returning to its ancient rhythms. And somewhere in the darkness, the ghost of the Phantom lingered. A story that would be told in whispers. A legend that would grow with each retelling. The woman who walked into hell and brought everyone out. The operator who proved that competence had no gender. The SEAL who became the standard by which all others would be measured. Lieutenant Kira Brennan, call sign Wraith. The mission was complete.